Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. And we're now about, 9 months after leaving the EU. We were told that all of our trade deals would be in place the day after leaving the EU. And yet, we've only actually arranged one this year. We have some carryover agreements that we organised before we left, while we were still members of the EU, of course. But the only one that has actually been negotiated and completed is the Japanese trade deal. And now the government are exposing the sick joke that it is in reality. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, yeah, I wasn't expecting to do this video. The Japanese trade agreement, which I'd already talked about a couple of times, had been agreed in principle, has now been signed. Could have talked about that, but very little else to say about it at the moment. But the government said a stupid thing again this morning. Or was it last night? I saw it this morning. Now, I don't know why I complain about them so much. I really should ease off, because they make my job a lot easier by continuing to open their pie holes with such regularity. But anyway, when the Japanese trade deal was agreed in principle, the government tried to say that it was better than the one we had as members of the EU. This did not seem likely at all. We knew it wasn't going to be, of course. But until you see it, you're a little bit limited in being able to point things out and go, actually, no, this isn't. But you know, the government still haven't published the details either. So I still can't see it. Even if it has been signed, I still can't see it. It's a pretty strong indication that it's going to be ridiculed heavily when they eventually do. Now, there are some things we do know about it, because there are some people who have seen it. We know, for example, that the deal contains leftover quotas from the EU. In other words, when it comes to trading in certain goods, we don't have our own quotas. We just get what the EU don't need. So take cheese, for example, which was talked about as a potential block, no pun intended, to agreement in the later stages. So let's say the EU fulfilled their quota. They used their full quota for that. We don't get to export any to Japan. In reality, the EU don't use all of it, so we should still be able to. Okay. Truss had originally tried to say that she'd refuse to agree to the deal unless Japan gave us our own quotas. They refused. We folded. That's the reality of our glorious golden age of post-Brexit dumbassery. But the point is that the EU take as much of the quotas as they wish to use. It's their quotas. We don't have our own. We get what's left, what the EU don't wish to use. The deal is essentially the same as we had as members of the EU, only we do not get access to our fair share of the quotas. What is left? That is it. We literally have a deal that might as well be entitled the scraps that fall from the EU table. Not seen the government boasting about that aspect of it. The cabinet minister that led negotiations, Liz Truss, tried to say that she'd proved the naysayers wrong by agreeing a deal in months rather than years, and that it was a Britain-shaped deal. No, it's a Japanese-shaped deal. That's why we folded on everything they wanted. Which, you know, I mean, it was demonstrably untrue that it was a Britain-first deal. Of course, if there are aspects of the deal that do compensate for the joke of getting the EU's quota crumbs, all she needs to do is to publish the full details. We'll be able to see it, won't we? Or she could at least point out some things that are clearly better than we would have had with the EU and show how the overall balance is greater, but they can't do that either. You know, come on, Liz, boast about something. So what is the department boasting about? Well, the Department for International Trade, which is her department, tried to respond to someone today on Twitter. They tried to big up the deal, which has now been signed, as I say, by countering that soy sauce would carry tariffs of 6% under World Trade Organization rules, but our trade deal means it will now be 0%. So they're going to say soy sauce is going to be cheaper. But there are a few things to say about this. One, why would you compare to World Trade Organization terms when looking at the Japanese trade deal? Or indeed any trade deal. What you do, you compare it to what you have right now. Whenever you're saying how much better a trade deal is, you compare it to what you had. We currently have no tariffs on soy sauce from Japan. For those of us who buy it, I buy it. So the real comparison is we currently have 0% tariffs on soy sauce, and as a result of this deal, we will have 0% tariffs on it. That's not an improvement. Indeed, the department did later on, because they got a lot of shit, not just from me on Twitter, they did later on confirm that it was comparing with WTO terms, not our current terms. So what they were saying is that the Japanese trade deal means that soy sauce will be cheaper, but just to clarify, it won't actually be cheaper than it is now, just cheaper than in some fantasy world that we made up to polish the turd of the deal we've struck. The second thing, how much soy sauce do we actually get from Japan anyway? Don't we import most of it from the EU because it costs way less to transport it that way? That is a rhetorical question. I've looked it up. Of course, we import the vast majority of our soy sauce from Europe. Japan is thousands of miles away. Thousands of miles away, for goodness sake. The Netherlands is right next door. In which case, we are actually going to be paying that extra 6% anyway if we don't get a Brexit deal. Yes, sure, we could instead buy it from Japan. We could increase our imports of soy sauce from Japan and not pay the 6%, yeah. But then we'd be paying the extra transport costs into the bargain, to say nothing of increasing our carbon footprint. And three, and this for me is I think the most relevant bit, are the government aware that they're comparing World Trade Organization terms? Are they aware that that's a massive own goal for them? Because what they are saying is that their deal is good and WTO is worse in comparison. Yeah, that's what they're saying. I agree with that. Absolutely agree with it. But if World Trade Organization terms is worse than a deal, why are we about to enter World Trade Organization terms with the vast majority of the world for the vast majority of our trade? Because if we don't get a trade agreement with the EU, that's where we're headed. Actually, even if we do get a trade deal with the EU, we are still on World Trade Organization terms with a whole host of countries around the world, including the United States. In the meantime, the government continue to push for and champion progress in deals with distant markets. The sickest joke of all is it may well be the case over the next few years that we end up with closer trading ties with countries such as Japan, as well as New Zealand and Australia, if we successfully pursue membership of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's possible, I don't know. The problem is that no matter how many trade barriers we break down with these countries, we are limited in the volume of goods that we can actually trade. I mean, the clue's in the name, Trans-Pacific Partnership. We are not in the pissing Pacific. It's miles away. You've got to go all the way around bloody Africa to get there. Or America, whichever way you like to go. And that's without even pointing out that the EU has a much higher GDP than these countries combined as well. So just in terms of wealth terms, if these Pacific countries, who again, they trade mostly with those closest to them as well, if they suddenly decided, actually, British goods, that's what we want the penguins, you can have the Tim Tams, then there isn't the combined wealth to facilitate that extra trade anyway, that we'll be losing with more ties with trade with the EU, or more barriers rather, fewer ties. So the plan is to pursue closer ties with countries thousands of miles away at a cost, that's going to have extra transport costs, all the rest of it. And fewer ties, maybe even non-existent ties with countries right next door. And you know what? The government will sell it as a Brexit victory. Every time they do it, they'll sell it as a Brexit victory. Even as our economy falls further and further behind others. At least come the next general election, we'll have a few years worth of post-Brexit trade data to expose this crap. Just depends how many people will actually listen to it. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.